when I share my story, I see how people are able to work on that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I've never had the opportunity to work through all my emotions or my anger or like all these different, because it's never just one emotion, right?
Yeah.
It's always a nuance. It's always layered.
Yeah.
But if you don't visit it, then that's where your growth ends. I mean, where you stop communicating on a certain event in your life, that's where your growth ends.
Yeah.
So if you can't talk about it, only surface level, then your level of growth for that event is surface level.
Yeah.
And so because I've known that and I've seen that in relationships in my life, I was like, okay, if that person can't talk about that, then I already know how deep or how shallow they can go. And it's never proved me wrong.
Yo, what up? It's your boy Rubino.
And this DJ in the building.
And you listening to the UpNUp Podcast.
Yeah.
Wait, what are we doing?
I don't know, just listen.
Yes. Welcome.
What it do?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuning to the UpNUp Podcast on the UpNUp Network. I'm your host, Rubino.
And I'm DJ man.
How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Blessed, right?
Yes, sir.
I got the same answer every episode,
yes,
man.
Sir.
Blessed, grateful. It's a beautiful day. Shout out to everybody in the room, the team, everybody here, bringing the vibes, bringing the good vibes. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. As I stated, this is the UpNUp Podcast. This is the podcast where we're focused on cultivating culture. We do that by providing amazing stories of individuals, groups, movements, the movers, the shakers, right? People who are breaking down barriers, taking up space in various industries, and putting it all down, not only for us, but for the next generation, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do it for.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do it for,
yeah.
right? If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the family. And for the consistent supporters, viewers, the family, La Familia, there's a lot of names for them, right? But shout out to y'all for the support. We appreciate y'all. Yeah, man, I'm feeling good. Every episode is always a special. It's always a special episode because it's a special journey, right? Special story. We get to amplify someone's journey. And today's guest is someone who I would say is definitely an inspiring force, who's been providing the world with guidance and wellness, right? And that's going to keep us moving in the right direction. She's definitely a true culture cultivator, who's keeping everything she's doing on the up and up. Today, we're joined by the professional wellness and holistic health coach, best-selling author and founder of the empowering nonprofit, the Runa Group, and really just overall community vessel, right?
Yeah.
Part of her mission is to really empower communities, give them the sustainability, right, to be able to take the power of their stories, right, and implement that into their work and the things they want to do. And really leaving a lasting effect for the next generation, right?
Yeah.
And she's doing that in so many ways. She has been doing it for so many ways, for so many years. We're honored to have her in the building. I feel like it's long overdue, but it's right on time, right?
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Our guest is none other than the powerful force herself, Annabel Quintero. Can we get a round of applause? Man? Give it up.
Yeah.
Give it up. How are you doing?
Great. Wonderful to be here. It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
How's the day treating you?
Really good.
Yeah.
I've been meeting a lot of great people today, great meetings and productive, and I get to be here with both of you and the whole team.
Yeah, definitely. Well, on that note, to start off, we start every episode with the quote of the day, right? Something just get the vibe right, get the conversation started. Brother man,
Yes, sir.
He's so excited. Look at him.
Yes, sir. All right, so the quote of the day today is, nature uses human imagination to lift her work of creation to even higher levels.
Who's that quote by?
Luigi Pirandello.
Okay.
Yeah. You want me to run it back?
Yeah, please do. You let
right.
a little mic drop right there. That was good.
I got to let it sink in a little bit. But anyways, the quote of the day is, nature uses human imagination to lift her work of creation to even higher levels. Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that. What does that quote mean to you?
To me, it's like we got to kind of like integrate with nature for us to like really have a sustainable earth and a place to live and like just make an impact on like why we're here, So
be one with it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
That's what it means to me.
We are one with it.
There you go.
We just got disconnected by the calendars, by institutional religion and cultural domination.
Yeah. Yep.
That's real. What does that quote mean to you?
It's interesting that I don't think human creations uplift Mother Earth. I think we're an expression of that oneness. So I always careful about humans being a hierarchy above Mother Earth. Right. So I kind of read into that. But it's a beautiful quote that just really brings it back full circle.
Yeah. I really like the imagination part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Human imagination.
I think human imagination is powerful. But, for better or worse too. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's good. Okay, I like that. Good quote. Good quote.
Thank you, man.
I love that.
Good quote.
Thank you.
Many expressions of Mother Earth, right?
Yeah. So Annabel, obviously our platform is really focused on storytelling, right? Giving you a chance to talk about your journey. But with every episode, I always love to start off just getting a sense of what season the guests are in. Right, I'm really big on seasons. We're all in different seasons. So for you, how would you describe kind of this current season you're in at the moment?
Fully embracing all my creations. I think before I would worry or stress about, okay, what's that one niche? What's this thing I'm doing? And you can only really do one thing at a time, right? But at the same time, I'm finally embracing all the facets, all the things that bring me joy and that allow me to create and be in community, and to just make sure that I'm honoring my ancestors, I'm honoring the way I'm raising my daughters, the culture, right? Through art and music. So just being a vessel and allowing that to be, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone, and still going for it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, though. You got to have those seasons of embracing, right? Like you might have a season where you're protecting, and then there's a season where you're just like, I'm letting everything in, taking it in. That's good.
Definitely. Excuse me. So I know we were talking about the season you're currently in, but I kind of want to take it back and talk about like your upbringing, where you're from, just growing up for you. Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So I'm the youngest of 5, and my parents met in Brooklyn, New York, and moved out here. My dad, they moved to Walla Walla, and then they moved to Seattle in 75, and then I was born here in Seattle. They're Ecuadorian, so I'm multiracial. I'm African, Southern European, and indigenous of South America. Growing up in Seattle, I mean, it was, at that time, it was called Union Bay, and we lived in the student housing for University of Washington students, student parents, I should say. Wow. The Northwest was just, there was a strong Native American culture, strong Asian culture, and then my family culture. There wasn't a lot of Latinos at all, really. A few here and there. And and the city was definitely still very diverse, but, segregated.
Still developing.
It was a small town, right? Yeah, it was a small town. I mean, you had Boeing, but that was you had Boeing, Children's, hospital, and
What was it like growing up for you? Like, what were the things that kind of helped you navigate as you were like obviously getting older, but then kind of coming into your own and like figuring out what is for me, what do I like? How did you kind of define or find those things?
I remember I had this one teacher that I was in one class, and I really loved being home. So as a little girl, I didn't understand why family would separate and leave the house to do all these things. So I was
Introvert.
kind of rebellious, and I
Yeah.
was like, no, I'm staying home.
Yeah.
And because of that, when I came back to school, I guess I must have fallen behind, and I went to another classroom. And this teacher had us eat different foods. She even had us, we'd have passports and we'd travel. So she'd have us like play, and we would travel around the world. And then I remember we came back, and all of our passports were burned, and it was like a disheveled classroom. And it was like, whoa. And then we were like, oh, is everyone okay? And I guess I'm sharing that because she really brought the whole global perspective, enjoying different cultures, enjoying different people's foods, and really embracing diversity in a whole way. And I was what, kindergarten, first grade, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, and she was Japanese American, and they named a school after her, and I cannot believe I'm blanking on her name, but Aki Kuros. There we go.
Okay.
I went there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I had no idea she was my teacher
Oh, wow.
until I was getting my master's in education policy. And then I was doing research on Seattle civil rights leader.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh my goodness, this teacher that impacted me and is actually Aki Kuros.
Wow.
The Aki Kuros.
That is crazy.
That's crazy for you too. 'Cause you
Yeah.
went there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a connection right there.
Yeah. So that's just how small Seattle is.
Yeah.
And then also how I grew up, right? Loving people, loving culture, knowing that you're always going to learn from someone.
Yeah.
Always treating people with respect and really honoring our human dignity. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow, that's still crazy. I still can't believe it. So I guess what were like some of your interests, like growing up, like navigating through Seattle? Like, yeah, pretty much. What were some of your interests?
Music and dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always wanted to be a dancer.
Mhm.
That was a huge, huge dream of mine. I think, unfortunately, you have parents that are coming from another country. They want you to do what's safe. So education was huge. And then also my parents were very religious, really strict. So spent a lot of time in the church. I'd observe Sabbath and was very conservative growing up.
Yeah.
And I mention that because it was good for me to have a day when I wasn't connected to the world, when it was just God, family, and nature. And that gave me that time away and like solitude and kind of knowing I can be in the world but not of the world. So yeah, I'd say that impacted me a lot.
I'm curious. So, part of your background is hip hop. You mentioned dance, right? So and you said you were a B girl, still a B girl. You never retire, right? I feel like, but was that kind of the first form of dancing you started doing, breakdancing, or like what kicked it off for you? Because I feel like that was something you really latched onto, right?
Oh yeah, I did. But no, the first dancing was cumbia, merengue, salsa.
Okay.
So I learned those dances at home. And, especially Celia Cruz being Afro-Latina and talking about Los Collares and, her being so proud of her African spirituality and knowing about that through music. And then also, and then the hip hop scene. So the 80s, right? I was in grade school when New York City Breakers were performing for Ronald Reagan and even the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
With Lionel Richie. So just seeing for the first time Latinos, seeing Puerto Ricans dancing and seeing them on TV and in these national spaces was like, whoa.
Especially at that time. It's it's like, it's big. It's a big deal.
And at that time too, there was freestyle, and freestyle brought in like the timbores, the drums with like that modern pop.
Yeah.
So that was really big, even though it kind of fell off, but it was huge at the time.
Yeah.
So it was hip hop, you know, you had heavy metal, rock, and, you know, Seattle. I love rock. I love heavy metal.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
just a big part of me too. So, but yeah, hip hop just, it was a whole thing to see, you know, people that look like me that were dancing and in the national limelight.
Yeah.
That was everything.
Yeah.
Nice. So what was your time like at UW, University of Washington?
Oh, wow. It was short and sweet because I went to community college for 2 years. I got my AA at that time. It was called Seattle Central Community College, which I love. I love all the professors there. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to continue in political science. But I worked a lot. I mean, I had to work my way through college, right?
Yeah.
So I worked. But it was fun because it was when I finally decided, okay, through meeting people at Seattle Central, we stayed connected. And then, you know, the scene is so small in Seattle at the time, right? We were talking the 90s. So like 95 through the 97s. And then meeting people in the DVS crew, like Fever One, Sneak.
So for those who don't know what the
on.
DVS crew is, can you describe?
Yeah,
or explain it?
DVS crew is like one of the Seattle pioneer crews. They started out as a graffiti crew,
Okay.
but they did all elements. So graffiti, b-boying, DJing, you know, rapping,
Yeah.
MCing, all that.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were younger, they were part of the hip hop scene in the 80s. I didn't know them then, but definitely once I went to college, you know, meeting Fever and Sneak, and then Soul One, yeah, that was everything. And then I started practicing at Jefferson Community. So here I am in college.
Yeah. Wow.
And then practicing at Jefferson Community, Beacon Hill. And yeah, that was the beginning of a lot of like my passion, my love, and then just having people that really knew the foundation and what the different moves were, but really the history of hip hop, because I had seen it from afar, but I never had people that knew the history and could honor it properly.
Yeah.
And teach me that.
I love that. I just love that because I think you mentioned the elements of hip hop, and I think rarely are people get a chance to get exposed and experience all the elements like firsthand, you know? Like we all experience the music, right? No matter who you are. You don't even got to really be into hip hop to experience the music. And maybe DJing, right? Rapping, but I feel like the breakdancing part is like it feels very niche, you know, I feel like it shouldn't be, but I don't know. I think that's dope that you got a chance to experience that.
Yeah.
Especially at the height of it.
Yeah. And I mean, in the 90s, there were just a few like Ken Swift, Wiggles, you know, definitely in Seattle, like Fever One. There was only a few people really keeping it going. And dance, you know, b-boy and b-girl, and it never really blew up because it couldn't be duplicated. It couldn't be mass produced the way music could be.
That makes sense.
And so it kind of didn't get the light of all the other elements. And I mean, graffiti has its ebb and flows, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what's going on with people socially and economically, and then, you know, how they're able to create, what their outlet is. So that's always been an ebb and flow.
I love that. Well, mentioning UW, obviously, I feel like everybody's post-graduation transition is like their own experience. But for you, you know, could you take us through, because obviously you did end up moving to New York, but like prior to that, what was that transition like after college and I guess leading up to making that decision?
Yeah. I had a really good job as a program coordinator for teaching, ESL, English as a second language, basically helping teachers get certified. I'm sorry, this thing.
Oh, no, you're good.
There we go. And so I was working at Seattle Central, and they were actually developing the whole internationals program at John L. Stanford. And having language immersion. That's right. That whole grant, Title VII at the time. And so there I was like working, and I was a board member at Everyone Has a Song, which was helping youth that was going in and out of interagency, helping them create music. I was B-girling. I mean, I was kind of like doing all the right things to be the, the best daughter, right? A professional, an artist. And I just had a really difficult time in my workplace at the time, and then also just in my relationships. And really what it was is sometimes you do all this work for your community, your family, what you're supposed to do, and then you realize the things you love, you're not doing them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of, I think what happened with me was I went to a wedding, had too much to drink. I hadn't drank in about a year. And anyways, I was so sad and distraught that the guy I was dating didn't come. It wasn't on him. It was just, I was so upset about life.
Yeah.
And I vented on him not showing up.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with him. It was about me, right? And my sister's driving. She finally we got to go. Because I was making a scene at the payphone. I was yelling, why aren't you, playing video games? And my sister came we got to go, Annabelle. We got to get out of here. And I get in the car, and then my mom was like, oh, ¿qué va a pensar la gente? What are people going to think? And that was a statement that I had heard so much as a young lady is, what are people gonna think? That was always on me to this sense of perfection, of being the perfect little girl, the perfect daughter, the doll, right? Being dressed up as, right? So I had all that. And I just lost it. And I was like, I don't care. And man, I was taking Wing Chun at the time. I shattered that. I shattered the whole, it didn't break into pieces, but the windshield definitely. The rage, right?
Yeah.
When you lose it. And thank goodness my sister was driving and she could somewhat see and drive to the side. But at that moment, it was almost instant, and I realized I gotta move.
Yeah.
It's time for me to move. I gotta do something with my life. And this isn't it. I have my office. I did everything right. I graduated in 4 years.
Yeah.
What don't I have on my resume?
Yeah.
And I'm 22. And I'm it's time for me to live my dreams.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's
yeah. I just love, well, first of all, you're very reflective and descriptive in terms of telling the story, which is dope. And
Thanks.
I also feel like a lot of people probably are going through that right now. Post grad experiences, things are clicking, things are right, but if it doesn't feel right, then it's not really right. And I think it is about being self-aware and figuring out what's next, right? But I guess I'm curious about, what was New York like when you first got there?
Yeah.
Oh.
What was the vibe like?
I loved it.
It's night and day.
It's
night and day from what we experienced out here.
I drove with, at the time, my best friend Claire, and I don't know, got there pretty quick. And my brother was already living in the West Village, little tiny apartment, but it worked. And so at the time, my friends lived in the Bronx and Kingsbridge. And so once, I got settled in Manhattan. One of the first memories I saw was I went to Lehman College. They had, in the summertime, there's festivals all over New York City. And I got to see Celia Cruz perform for free in the Bronx, because she loved, toda la gente. She loved community. She loved, everyone. And so she performed. And so that was my first, wow.
Welcome to New York
I'm seeing this legend. I didn't even have to pay. Right? And I'm in the Bronx, and I'm hanging out with, Claire at the time. I think, Fever One and Little Lep from New York City Breakers. Because so I'm I hear this legendary B-boy is now a friend. It just, it was what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine, especially like you know, like when you hit your breaking point, as far as like I got to move. You don't know what's ahead, but then you go there, and then all this starts coming into fruition. You know, so it's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And it's, you always know, even if you don't know what step to take. I think anytime you're in the moment and it's generative,
Right.
like you're taking that unknown step, but it's giving you more energy.
Yeah,
That's usually the right direction.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you're
like
right.
you could be doing all the right stuff by everyone else's definition, but if you feel depleted and you get tired and like, then you gotta switch course.
Yeah. The energy. If it's giving you like that positive, it's like positive reinforcement.
Yeah, generative, right?
Generative.
When
I love
it's
that.
like giving you something.
Without, even if it's uncertain, you feel it. You know you're right. You're heading in the right direction. I love that.
Yeah. So what were like some I guess your other like most memorable moments in New York, like when you first got there and like adjusting, like you know, just going off of your question.
I feel like New York is just like a like you don't just get there.
It's its own place, man.
Like, you gotta really make it work. You know what I'm saying?
Well, my brother, he's like, oh, I'm gonna take you to Chang's, and I was like, what? And it was a restaurant, a really good restaurant, and everyone was there was a whole show, a drag queen show, and I had never gone to a show like that. I mean, I grew up in Seattle, right? And but they didn't have shows like that. I mean, you had the Rocky Horror Show, right? Where you'd go to the theater and people would act out stuff by watching that movie. But it was different to be in New York and being with my brother and having him take me here and take me to this restaurant and him explaining. He goes, north, the street numbers go up. If you go south, the numbers go down, and all the names run. What is east west? Right.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just gonna take your word for it.
North south.
I don't know.
North south.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the streets
You've been in New York
go
more
east
times
west.
than me.
Yeah.
So you can't get lost. Like once he said that, it was like, oh, I can't get lost. He goes, yeah. So.
Wow. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but yeah.
Yeah, because if you go up to Harlem, right, it's 110th Street, 116th Street, and if you're going south, and you're down in the teens in the West Fourth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that we're like kind of in New York, right? Now a big part of kind of I feel like your growth and just kind of your story is, for those who don't know, you did release a book, right?
Yeah.
It's displayed here on these shelves. And so the book's title, Step, Step, Jump, Transforming Trauma to Triumph from the 46th Floor, right? It's a best-selling book, and it really captures your personal firsthand experience actually escaping the 46th floor of one of the towers from the World Trade Center on September 11th. And now, I'm sure you've obviously told this story, but I also would like to just kind of get your take on the process of like not just releasing the book, but like I guess what went into that for you. I mean, you could obviously describe kind of the book as well, but
well, I've always journaled my whole life, so even I have journals from 3rd grade, and then even when I lived in New York throughout my life, I had journals. So I had tried many times to write my book, but after the 11th, I wrote a long email to my family and my dearest friends of what had happened. And I told them, I'm putting everything that happened and you can read it. But when you call me, don't call me and ask me a question about that day. Like you can speak to me and call me about like the moment, the day, like now, but I can't go back. So I wrote it for them so that they knew what I had gone through. And so then after years, right, like I never told anyone I was a September 11th survivor, like never. PTSD, all that. I didn't want the stigma. And also, out of respect of everyone who passed that day, and then who gave up their life to serve the country, and then everyone who's passed in the wars around the world, like that's all one thing for me. It's not separate.
It's all connected.
It's all connected for me.
Got
So
you.
September 11th and all these wars is all one thing, which is very different than how most people look at it. And some people, when they would find out, they would ask me questions and they'd get all excited. What? Da, 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 right. And I could see in their eyes, it was like a movie there, and then I was like, no.
Like it was for their entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was no sadness and remorse and absolute like that's nothing to get excited. And it was more of like a movie, like a show for them versus them actually wanting to know like how it is to survive war
Right.
and the brutality of it. And so, and I couldn't handle it. So that's why I never told anyone.
Yeah.
But then, years, right? Like it took me years, and little by little I kept adding to it. But it wasn't until I'd say 2019 when I became a student of Lisa Nichols that as a student we had to do with a 3-minute valley. And I did it. And then they picked me to share that story on her stage. Now, mind you, besides students in my class, I had never gone on stage or never to the world to ever tell anyone I'm a September 11th survivor, let alone tell everyone about it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And when I did that, it was like, oh my goodness. Like people could feel that moment. And I realized there's so many people that have traumatic stories that we just leave them in the dark. We leave them in the closet. We don't share them. We don't talk about them. But the storytelling itself heals us. And I felt like, okay, this is the work I'm going to do now. So I got a therapist to help me write it. It was COVID at the same time. So I was trying to help my daughters through their own trauma with that. And then, had editors, and I also had a support network that helped me. So I needed a lot of support to write it. So that's why it took 20 years.
Yeah.
It was a long journey.
Yeah. So it released in 2021, right?
Yeah.
So how was it received? Like, I guess, like, what was kind of the reception? Because, a lot of times it's therapeutic for you, right?
Yeah.
But then when you also get to see how it may have impacted or connected others, it may also just lessen the burden a little more, right? When you see how it's really positively impact people. But how was the reception for that?
It depended on the person, on the reader.
Yeah.
So with some readers, they would say, wow, I haven't thought about God in a long time. And your book actually made me think about that, which I thought was great, right? And then some people were like, wow, you're so vulnerable. Like, how could you put that all in a book? Right? Because I don't only share September 11th, but I share other traumatic moments in my life because it was important for me, for people to know that most of us have many traumatic moments in our life. It's not just this one thing, right? Yeah. And we all overcome our own trauma in different ways, right? Different age, whatever age we're in at that time. And also then a lot of people too really loved, the spiritual aspect of it. Like the hip hop, they loved the hip hop part. So, and then there were some people that said, I didn't know that political history of our country. They said, you should teach a whole course in this because I never knew any of this.
Yeah.
And that made me feel good that they learned something from reading my book. And I don't think people expect that. They think it's just going to be a September 11th.
Yeah, it's like don't judge a book by its cover. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There you go.
Literally.
Yeah. So people learned a lot about racism in this country and so many different levels, right? the laws, the culturally, economically, and I definitely interrogate it when I was in the cab, because as I was trying to leave the city, my whole life flashed through me. So I'm recounting all my thoughts on, well, I study political science, right? I mean, that's so I'm going through all the history that I've read and seeing it come alive through that moment and through my life. And so that's one thing that people come away with. And I was like, okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like you just never know how what you create is going to be interpreted, and then how it's going to connect with people. But you did your job. That's why I tell anybody who's a creative, it's like once you release it and you fulfilled your intention for why you created it and it's out there, it's like it's not really yours anymore in a sense. Yeah. Right? Because it's how they receive it. So, but it's always good to get that back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely. And I know you explained to us like your process of like how long it took you to write the book and like putting everything out there. So like, I guess what advice would you have for people that, or who are seeking to kind of like face their trauma and get over it? You know what I mean? Or get through it?
Yeah. When you storytell, one of the things I realized I had done was talk about the past. And so when you storytell in the present moment, the reason why I'd say it's harder for people to share those traumatic stories is because you're reliving it.
Yeah.
So when, I talk about like the morning of, like Monday nights, that's like the best night to go out in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Best parties, right? And I slept in and I almost didn't go to work, but there were all these crows cawing and I went out my window. I was like, wow. And I mean, they were waking me up, right? And I was like, okay, all right, I have enough time to get there. So I get on the subway and I go down there and I get into the office and I see my boss's sweater on the chair and I'm like, oh my goodness, he beat me to it. So he's in the bathroom. I got to hurry up. So I'm like trying to turn on everything. I had to print the portfolios. I had to get him ready for the stock market. I was an operations analyst. And so his portfolio needed to be all laid out, ready for him to trade. And so, I was doing all that. And then all of a sudden, like, I feel something just fall on my building. And I'm like, what was that? And I go to the window, I go out to see, and it's a clear sunny day. There's not another building taller than me. I thought like another building had fallen on mine. And then the shaking happens. And I'm like, New York doesn't get earthquakes.
Yeah.
And the shaking was crazy. So, I grab my purse, I run to the door, and I'm facing this older Asian man, and I can see the fear in his eyes. And the building stops for a moment, stops the shaking, and then it shakes again, and he just runs back into his office, and I'm there left alone. And I remember asking myself, ay Dios mío, ¿qué hago? Like, dear God, what do I do? And the office, I looked back in, and it was like this muted gray, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. But in that moment, then the fear starts setting in, right? And it's like that cold feeling. And I had to tell myself, Annabel, just try. I know you're not supposed to leave your desk. I know the stock market's about to, but just go down and make sure everything's fine, and you come right back. And I did that. And as I was taking, every step, it was like the building started shaking again, and I was being thrown around like this doll in a, rag doll, right? In this fun house. And I finally get to the stairwell and I couldn't tell if it was hot or cold. That's how freaked out I was. And I was thinking, oh, maybe I go to another stairwell, but I had never gone to another stairwell. So I don't even know where that is. And I was like, nope, just stop and just practice your just breathe. And I breathed, and then I could finally tell that okay, it's cold. And I opened the door, and then I started choking. there was no smoke and I was choking. There was like this invisible stench that was choking me. And I'm like, oh, there's a fire. I'm like, okay, something hits my building. There's an earthquake and a fire.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And with all my might, that's where I put my hand on the railing and I just stepped to my left and I stepped to my right and I jumped on the landing and I jumped and I jumped down 46 flights on September 11th.
Wow.
And the book goes through everything that happened, right? That I encountered in the stairwell. But that little piece of me speaking in the present was the hardest thing for me to do.
Yeah.
Because I had to relive that moment. But when you can storytell in the present, you touch it, you touch that pain, and it's sizzling, it's burning you, you know, and it'll burn your body in different ways. Every time you tell the story, it's gonna burn. But as you do it, it's like sometimes, like usually I'm on a stage and I'm moving, and so that helps, right? My tone, my voice, it will change, and that helps because the more I can let things out, right? Yeah. Then it lets the heat out.
Yeah.
But it helps you heal.
Right.
So I'm sharing this because it's like we need to know that the storytelling, our ancestors always storytelled, and that is how we were able to carry the lessons of our culture to make sure that everyone could feel the intensity of the moment and what it really meant in our hearts, like our ancestors' hearts, especially when we're passing on a story to a younger generation that they're not growing up in that world. Yeah. And so there's reverence, and so there's understanding, and hopefully they don't have to choose the same path that we did.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think also like that's a great question too, because everybody's experience is different. So even like giving that advice, some people might take that and say, okay, well, that may not apply to my experience, which is probably valid, right? But I think what you said is true in terms of you have to let it help you heal in a way, right? Because I think there's a lot of people out here who want to speak their truths, right? And they know there's power in their stories. But from your experience, you know, once you started getting out there and really, you know, sharing your story and connecting it to real people, as people were giving you the feedback, right? Positive feedback, if that's the case, did it make you even more confident in telling the story as you went on? Because I feel like that could also help people to know, like, yo, you just got to get out there and connect to people to kind of be able to build that confidence over time.
I think the feedback that I would get was mostly them being able to share their own story. Okay. Right? Yeah. And so that is huge. Like if someone trusts me with their story and I'm the first person that gets to hear, even sometimes their family doesn't even know. Yeah. And they're sharing that with me, and I feel so honored, right? So I'd say the feedback is more of them feeling like they have permission to share. In other spaces, because I do work with an amazing group of speaker advocate coaches for Lisa Nichols, and we are storytellers, they help with more of nuance, more of the actual speaking technique. Okay. So there's a different, like I have a group that helps me with that because we're always sharing something. Yeah. So that's powerful. Yeah. And then of course with people, and then also you hear their own September 11th story. Like everyone remembers where they were, you know, if they're old enough, where they were on September 11th. And I get to hear their story, and in a way they get to heal, because one of the things that we don't realize is that was a collective traumatic event. Yeah. And because it was on TV, you didn't have to be in New York to feel that sadness and the grief and just the pain. And so it was everyone's pain. Yeah. And when I share my story, I see how people are able to work on that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I never had the opportunity to work through all my emotions or my anger or like all these different, because it's never just one emotion, right?
Yeah.
It's always a nuance. It's always layered.
Yeah.
But if you don't visit it, then that's where your growth ends. I mean, where you stop communicating on a certain event in your life, that's where your growth ends.
Yeah.
So if you can't talk about it only surface level, then your level of growth for that event is surface level.
Yeah.
And so because I known that and I've seen that in relationships in my life, I was like, okay, if that person can't talk about that, then I already know how deep or how shallow they can go. And it's never proved me wrong.
Yeah.
That's actually true.
Yeah.
That's true. I think also what you're getting at is I think the strength comes from understanding like it is work, right? Everything, you got to work for everything, right? And even things such as healing, you got to work for it. And I feel like that's because the piece about you saying, okay, let me go get a speaking advocate coach, right? That's work. That's commitment. That's discipline to not only just tell your story, but you want to make sure that you're doing the right, doing it justice, right?
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? So, I love that you're sharing all these elements so that people know like it is more than just kind of expressing yourself. Is doing the work and really owning your story, I guess.
Yeah,
taking ownership over it.
Standing on it, and knowing there's some stories that you're not ready to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of it, and helping people through that. Like I think sometimes people want to share a story and they haven't truly understood, like, am I going to fall apart on stage or in an interview? Then no one's going to rescue you, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to be ready to share it. And I don't think people are told that.
Yeah.
And so they want to share because they want the healing, but they don't realize, well, why do you want to share and in what environment? Not every stage and every venue is for you. You know, depending on where you are at with that story, and that's why I shared all of that. And it is work, and healing. There's no steps to healing. That's the other thing. It's your own journey. It's what you put into it, and it will not. It's not about time.
Yeah.
Sometimes decades can go on and you're in the same place because you didn't put in the work.
Yeah.
And that's a misconception that many people have, that, oh, time will heal. No, you work. You have to work at your healing. That's why I jumped into my cultural blind spot and did a 10-day meditation of Vipassana. I mean, who meditates for 10 days in silence?
Yeah.
Who then goes and does a sweat lodge? Like, I had never done a sweat lodge, and then to realize, like, oh my goodness, like that drum, man, to hear the drum, and then the singing, and then to realize that even though I had, after the 10-day sit, I had realized I understood why I was triggered and why I would react in the rage and everything that would just come out. And in New York, it's easier to be angry than it is in Seattle, right? Because everyone is like, rah, rah, here.
It's like normal out
there.
For sure.
So there's a lot of angry people in New York, and you're fine. Everyone's like, okay,
whatever. Everybody gets it.
Yeah, everyone gets it, right? Yeah. And so, but I couldn't walk into buildings. I mean, I live in New York. How am I not going to walk into a tall building? I was like, true. I got to heal myself.
Right.
I got to go back to the city.
Yeah.
And so here I am doing something. I wasn't raised meditating. I mean, praying, yes, but not meditating. And definitely not doing a sweat lodge. I mean, even though I was indigenous, there was no one in my family that practiced or had a connection with that, right? It was, it's in our DNA, but it wasn't a cultural practice at all.
Yeah.
So doing the sweat lodge and then realizing, wow, Mother Earth, like, she took the trauma in my body and released it. And that experience is why I talk about Mother Earth and us being one with nature, because it was real. It was an experience. It wasn't that anyone told me. It was a knowing that I left with after that. And then it's been like, okay, if she's done that and she quenches our thirst, gives us shelter, gives us food, then what's my relationship with her? Like, how am I saying thank you? And so that's what's continued, helped me and continues helping me every day, is having a relationship and making sure that my wellness and the wellness of others is a part of that. It's not just an individual thing.
Yeah.
That's not helping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be well to help the collective.
That's real.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's just, man, it's real work. Sounds like it's definitely real work. And
Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of, I guess, steer into the nonprofit.
Yeah.
What sparked the idea to start the Runa Group?
Wow. So I had started it years as a business. It was actually a beverage.
Oh, wow.
I was
okay.
making indigenous drinks
Yeah.
that my mom had raised me with, and I didn't realize they were indigenous until I started going back into that. And the summer solstice, there's a big festival. It's like our New Year's in the Andes, and Inti Rami. And so we make all these drinks from all the fruits and vegetables we've harvested, and grains. And so that's how I started it. And then, but with the art and culture, I was like, well, I was doing diversity training, and it was very cerebral. It was a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this isn't it. Right? I'm like, it's not, where's my culture? Where's my art? And then I said, well, I could teach diversity, like American ethnic studies, right? I could teach that history, but why don't I include my cultural experience? Why don't I include the music and the dance and the art history so that everyone actually enjoys it and wants to be there?
Yeah.
Because I was doing some of these trainings, you could tell the employees are like, they have to be there, right? And it's just not fun.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted something fun, and I want to enjoy my life too. I want to teach, but I also, this is it. This is all we get. Right.
Yeah.
So I want to enjoy my life. And so I started integrating that, and my love for dancers. I was like, man, I really, a lot of the dancers that I've known that are now seniors, they're still broke. They can barely pay their hospital bill, and they've performed for the president of the United States. And so to see artists like economically isolated and just, they're not politically correct. A lot of hip hop heads, are very traumatized, right? They grew up in their own war zone in the urban areas, and people that don't have that urban experience don't realize the wars that they've overcome. So I talk about the Bronx burning, and I just integrated it all. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do these lectures and invite dancers and pay them. So I'm going to pay dancers, right? Because for their time, but also help them with financial literacy, like help them build the creations that are digital, like NFTs, and have them own their own AI image. And make sure that we have our own digital museum. That's the goal, because I don't want us left behind again with this digital movement. And what's happening is people are copying or taking videos from dancers, and they're not getting any money from the views or from AI taking the moves. And it's hard to dance, and you're only going to dance for so long. You gotta even though I keep trying,
you still got it. You still got it.
I don't know, man. My back was killing me after those 10 rounds of footwork I did. I was like, oh no. But yeah, so the goal is to, in the beginning, help, have it be this preservation of art. And history, and talk about the socio-political things that were happening. That's important, because that's what we're alchemists. we've just forgotten,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we take this oppression and then we end up creating something from it, and then it becomes this whole art movement. But people forget, yeah, well, we were just trying to get through,
Yeah.
right? We were trying to just heal and be happy
Yeah, survive.
and survive,
Yeah.
and then business comes along and monopolizes it, and then you got the culture vultures doing the same thing,
Yep.
right? And so I'm really want to keep that lineage. So Mambo to hip hop is like the lineage of what Black and brown artists have done, other communities too, but that's
Yeah.
the base.
I
The
love that.
political history, and then building it out so that there's a place that we created by us. It's our history.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting paid for
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's our image,
Yeah.
and it's forever going to be on the blockchain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Wow,
that. I love
that's
the
amazing.
preservation aspect because, yeah, like, you know, even our platform is about the next generation, because soon enough we'll be, you know, we'll be the ones who we're hoping are being preserved, right? And so I love that, because I think it is important to not only pay homage but keep them current, right? There's still so much, people have something to offer. Everybody has something to offer, right?
Mhm.
And I think we don't want that gap to widen between generations, right? Especially in certain art forms like breakdancing. You know what I mean? So I think that's a very it's just a powerful contribution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even just having the knowledge of it, it's like will spark it to like keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh this was happening. Oh wow, we got to figure out how to keep this going. You know, so that's another aspect that I really like about it. Just and just in general, just preserving the whole culture and kind of like telling it your way, so that nobody else like puts their narrative on it and then switches it up a different
Mhm.
way. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it exists. It exists in every other industry, right?
What?
Like just kind of those generational connections, right? Like you look
Mhm.
at sports, you know, they got like what the top 75 players in the last 75 years, so like they all come together, they're still connected. Even hip hop, rap, you know, you got the older rappers, but they still do songs with the younger artists. So I think for breakdancing that's so key, right? To
yeah.
have the dancers from the past be able to stay connected and still be relevant, and because they should be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
And the stories, oh my goodness, that they share.
yeah,
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing too, is the younger generation will also see that no matter what they end up facing, what they're facing now, once they hear the stories of the past, they realize, oh, we've been here before.
Mhm.
And what
Yeah.
did we do?
Yeah,
Right?
guidance.
Yeah. Knowing that, oh, we still chose to create on our own terms.
hmm
And hopefully with, I think, more financial literacy and having a way to navigate so that we can be economically abundant, because
Mhm.
that's something that we've always been economically deprived, or we've been extracted, our lives and all of that has been extracted from
Mhm.
for other people's wealth. But now that we are sovereign, for us to be able to do that, and for the younger generation to focus on what am I going to create, even though if this world does not change, who do I have to be?
Yeah.
And what am I going to create with what I got? Just
Mm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
this.
Yep.
And then the relationships, right?
Yep.
And then I think that's where it'll be good for them. It'll be good for them to connect and have more relationships. And that's one thing with technology. It's kind of, there's a middleman there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But hopefully they can still make time to just have that analog time,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Speaking of the younger generation, as we kind of like getting close to wrapping things up here, I'm always curious, like for you, just if you look back, right? Like what's some advice you'd give to your younger self? All that you know now, something you wish younger Annabelle would have known. Like what would you tell her?
That striving for perfection is the thief of all joy. To your parents always want the best for you, but most people show up with their fears and their hurt. to know their people, right? You know, even when you're having your worst day, like, smile. Like, it seems, I mean, I know that for me, I have cried through my smiles. I've been angry through my smiles. And then, like, to be on the street and see someone else who's like has a, solemn face, and then they light up and you made their day. And then you realize, wow, like, I can impact someone and someone's mood. And it was just because I chose something that society doesn't really value. But it's also saying it's going to get better.
Yep.
Like, you're wearing it on your face. Like, it's going to get better. It's awful right now. But it's going to get better. I know it is. And I'm going to wear it and I'm going to be it. And then you end up seeing how you impact someone else's life. And then you're like, oh, yeah.
Yep.
And then also, I will say, because of the PTSD and depression I suffered from, I'd say volunteer. Because anytime you need to get out of that, when you volunteer somewhere, you see people that have less than you and that are going through a lot more than you are. And then you start realizing how much you can be grateful for. And that's the beginning part of, like, getting out of that depression. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
That's good advice.
Also, I wanted to touch on you being a coach and coaching people. So I know, like, as someone being coached, we get a lot from our coach. So what has, like, coaching done for you? Like, what have you kind of realized about people, and, like, how has it impacted yourself, just coaching people through whatever they got going through, or whatever they got going on?
Wow. Sometimes people only want to grow to a certain point, and you got to let them, right?
Yeah.
I did more holistic health coaching, so that was like food and health, fitness, and that was a lot harder than helping someone with, ways to make their organization more diverse and inclusive, or helping them with their storytelling. That's very different, because with the food and the working out, I mean, if they have these, diseases, or they're not well, like, if you don't change your habit, you're literally going to die.
Yeah.
Right. And I think while I was, I'm still a certified holistic health coach, I just don't focus my work there.
Right.
But I live it, and I try to help people here and there. Right. But it was the hardest lesson for me to learn to say to myself, I have to let that person die. I have to let that person go. Like, if they don't want to change, I'm going to speak blessings to them. But also, it was, like, sad for me, because it's like, I know where that trajectory is going. Right. And so for me personally, it's hard work, because you can only work with certain people. And then it's also, I need to fill my cup.
Right.
Because how am I going to show up as a coach if my cup is not full?
Yeah, that's real.
So sometimes, some people don't get that. Why are you going off and going to go dance here or go? It was like, I need joy in my life. I have to do things just for me, just for my joy, just for my health. Sometimes I'll eat something that it's just healthy. It doesn't even taste good, but I know I need it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'd say coaching really taught me to also manage myself, so I could show up for people the way they need.
Yep.
And
That's
that's the most important thing, that you can't stop doing your own healing and your own work as a coach. And so that's another thing that you sometimes will see leaders, and they stop, and they're doing great, and they're teaching great, and they're helping people. But they themselves, when they stop, you start seeing certain things in their life happen, or even if it's just people around them, right? And so just to make sure that don't stop putting the work into your own healing.
Yeah.
Don't stop putting the work into your self-care and your self-love. And sometimes you got to say, I can't at this time.
Yeah.
Or, you got to change the schedule, and it's not.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it with integrity, and people usually know, like, look, I'm just not in the good place right now.
Yeah.
Or I need to do, right now I don't have space. It's hard, it's uncomfortable, but it's important to do that as a coach. And so I've learned that the boundaries, right? Having healthy boundaries is another thing that I've really learned that are key for you to stay in the game.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I also like that we're all works in progress, continuously.
Yeah,
that's real. Man, Annabel, this is full of gems. Full of gems.
Good, I love it.
Yeah, it just effortlessly, it just flows. Now, before we kind of wrap things up here, first of all, where can people connect with you and follow you on social media, or if you have websites, things like that? Please share with the people.
Yeah.
You got them.
Well, I'd say Instagram, Annabel_Quintero. That's more my wellness work, and my personal life. But LinkedIn,
okay,
especially if it's more of a institution or organization, and then the 2 programs, I'm doing a Mambo to Hip Hop course for the youth, and that's under my nonprofit. Okay. So if they're an adult, it's a sliding scale, but if they're youth, it's free. Okay. And that it's at after school HQ. Okay. But the link is in Instagram.
We'll definitely share that out.
Yeah. After school headquarters is a website. It's a great website. But it's for Runa empowerment. And then I have another program I'm doing called Embrace Feminine Wellness, which is just for women 30 and older. Because that's another group that I like to do a lot of work with as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, y'all heard it. Make sure you guys go connect and tap in.
Yep. And Step Jump on Amazon too.
Yes.
Make sure you guys get
Step Jump on Amazon. Now, before we get you out of here, we always ask every guest this question. So if you can, what's one word to describe what keeps you on the up and up, and why?
Love. I just have a lot of love. And I realize I just want to share it. Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
Love. Spread love. Go. It's the Brooklyn way. I just, we were talking about New York a lot.
Yeah, I know.
I throw that in there. I throw that in there. But yeah, Annabel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad we were able to do this.
I know, me too. I'm so honored. Yeah. Thank you both.
No, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
We wish you much success moving forward with everything you got going on. You know you got support with us here at the Up and Up.
Yeah, always.
And with that being said, I think it's safe to say Annabel Quintero is officially a member of the Up and Up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap.
To continue supporting the podcast and the entire Up and Up movement, be sure to rate, review, like, and subscribe.
As well as follow us at _the Up and Up on all social media platforms to stay connected with everything the Up and Up has coming your way.
Thanks for listening, and until the next one,
keep it on the Up and Up.